Hello, my beautiful watchers. So, what I'm doing now is I'm experimenting with some sort of more low-maintenance, largely unscripted videos, sort of rambly sort of things that I have avoided like the plague in the past because I am very distinctly not confident in my ability to be coherent without a script to follow word for word, so we shall see how this goes. This will hopefully allow me to cover some more books that maybe I wouldn't have had the time to cover on the main channel, and spotlight some things that maybe I want to talk about but doesn't have enough substance to make a full scripted video with all the special effects and everything. So today I would like to talk to you about The Fourth State of Matter. This is a self-published book by Darcy Arden. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, I've got no reference guide here. Let's see, she wrote a bit about herself. Her main goal when she started writing The Fourth State of Matter, to provide readers with a fun story featuring the three S's: science, sex, and spaceships. It's her first published novel, but only the first of many, I assume, because it says the beginning of a great adventure. I could definitely tell from reading this was the first in a series of books, or an intended series of books, because there's not really an ending to it as such. For the sake of transparency, I do want to mention that this is a Patreon-sponsored review. Darcy asked me to review her own book for the second channel, which I was okay with, though I did make it clear to her that this would not be a promotion. This is a review, or possibly like something like giving feedback, stuff like that. So I will not just be, pretending I like it if I don't. This will be an honest review with my honest opinions. It's got a pretty fucking solid blurb on the back. I'm just gonna read it to you now. Space is cold, the sex is hot, and the rebellion is right on target. Earth is dead. Humanity survives by selling the only resource available: themselves. 2689 has signed away his rights as a living being and become decor, living artwork that rich aliens use to decorate their homes. It's a stable existence, but a boring one, until one day his owner plays host to three unexpected guests. Large, loud, and more potent than anything that 2689 has ever experienced, this trio of ship dwellers from the wrong side of the universe awakens a desire he can't ignore. However, blissful days of sex and companionship with Brog, Desmodian, and Zarvis come to an end when 2689 discovers a plot that could land them in jail, or worse. 2689 will have to make a choice: stay silent and allow these innocent lives to be ruined, or give his stable life to protect the ones he loves. So first piece of feedback, there's no rebellion in this book. Like, nothing even close to a rebellion. So this opening blurb, as effective as it is a complete fucking lie. And I don't love that. Yeah, it's definitely not a war story. I would describe it a bit more like Firefly. It's just some people trying to make their way and earn a living on a spaceship in a sci-fi environment. So, I mean, I'm sure you could have found a blurb that made sense in that context too. It was equally intriguing. It's an interesting and, unique concept though, the idea that in the future humanity has destroyed Earth with pollutants or war or whatever, and the main character has chosen to sell himself into slavery to either, avoid starvation, or I believe it's also mentioned that the money from his sale contributes to paying for like a colonization effort to relocate the remainder of humanity to other planets so they won't die out. And as you have no doubt surmised, it is erotica. It is... Furry's the wrong word because none of the creatures in this have fur. I'm not well versed enough in erotica to know what the word is for this, but it's non-human erotica. Like, the main character belongs to three aliens who all have sex with him. One is like lizard, one is like a bird man, and the other is like a big troll with 4 arms. So yeah, the sex scenes get interesting with that going on. So the opening scene in this actually made me laugh out loud, and it's kind of funny. I was actually having a really rough day, and I was like, oh yeah, I better get started on that Patreon book. And I just read the first page, and it's described. The opening sentence describes the spaceship flying through an asteroid belt. It's like shaking, things are hitting it. It's dodging and weaving, classic science fiction cliche opening. Then the perspective pans into the bridge and straight into the guy in the pilot's chair fucking the main character up the ass. It's like, okay, wow, yeah, no, setting the tone. Pretty good there. That is good to know. Now, unfortunately, I found the rest of the book a little hard to get through, but I do want to stress this is not because it's a really bad book or because the writing's terrible. It's just because, like, everything about it just isn't really my thing, This may seem strange because I review so much of it on my channel, but I'm not actually that into erotica. Like, I'm a very sexual person, but erotica is just not how I engage with that, you know? I don't like necessarily reading books about sex. I do other things. Let's not go into that. It's also, you know, it's, as I mentioned, non-human porn, which isn't my kink, and it's male on male, which isn't my sexual orientation, so I wasn't really getting a lot out of the sex scenes, and, you know, when it's erotica, that's kind of a big part of the book, so a lot of it was lost on me. It's also quite heavily a submissive fantasy. This main character is owned by 3 much more dominant males, and that's, the submissive thing isn't my kink, so yeah, so much of this book was lost on me. It's also very soft science fiction, you know, there's not a lot of stuff that actually makes a lot of sense. In fact, there were a few things in here that just like completely broke my brain. Like, I prefer quite hard science fiction where the rules are laid out, the science makes kind of sense even if it is fictional. And yeah, this one just kind of leans into the Star Wars science fantasy kind of thing where it's like, oh, it doesn't make any sense, but it's not the point of it to try and make sense. There's things like, they mentioned there's a ring of like garbage that goes around, like that's thrown out by all the like the populated planets. They apparently all dump their garbage into this one spot in the galaxy, and it actually creates like a massive ring around an entire section of the galaxy that you have to pass through to get out to like the outer worlds, the more frontier lands. And it's reading that short-circuited my brain for just a second, because I was trying to calculate how much mass would be required for a dense field of junk to go around an entire section of the galaxy, and it's like, I mean, that's more mass than is in any given galaxy. Like, and again, I'm so overthinking this because it's it's an erotic space fantasy, but like, that's where my brain goes. There's also basic things like stars passing you as you're traveling like through the galaxy, and it's like, that's not how light works, and space creatures feature in it at one point. There's also like cliches like every planet has a number, even like the populated ones. It's like, oh yes, this is Trantis 6 or Virgon 7. Like, I don't know if Star Trek started that trope, but it's usually a sign of fairly generic science fiction if someone goes into that, because I don't know, I don't think a world that people actually live on would identify with a number. Like, we number things in our solar system, but like, it's the small objects that aren't really worth, like, don't come up very often. Like, we don't have, it's not called like Venus isn't like Venus 7, or Mars isn't like Sol 1, Sol 2, so, you know. There was one really intriguing moment where the main character mentioned there was a void that had formed quite recently at the center of the galaxy, like the galactic core had vanished and no one liked talking about it, and I was like, hey, well, that's really interesting, but it's only mentioned once. Again, I don't know if this is something that's going to come into the sequels, but I was like, oh wait, no, I want to hear about that one. No, don't go have sex with the alien again. I want to hear more about the void at the center of the galaxy. But again, this is just me, because, you know, the sex wasn't landing, so I was desperate for plot points to sink my teeth into. But anyway, yeah, the main character is called Pet. He used to go by a number, was it 2689? But when he was bought by the nice alien sexy people, they called him Pet instead, and he kind of liked going by that name. The general layout of the book is it's 2 storylines that are running sequentially. It's one chapter for what's happening in the present, where these guys go off on a mission, and then it's one chapter for set in the past where they first met, like when he was owned by a not nice alien, I guess, who was using him as decor, and how they ended up all having an orgy and then them picking him up and leaving with him. So it's like back and forth. It's like an episode of Lost. It will just like divides its time fairly equally between these 2 storylines. This is fine as a storytelling technique in principle. I did find, because both stories were fairly slow burn, because this is the setup to a series of novels instead of just like a self-contained story. I was a good like a third of the way through the book, and then halfway through the book, then maybe like 3/4 of the way through the book, and I felt like neither story had really gotten to the point yet. So I was like, okay, well, I have 2 stories and nothing's happening in either of them. So yeah, the three sexy aliens involved. One is a big lizard man with like a mask permanently attached to his face. One is the big troll dude, and one is a feathery bird man. And I'm not gonna lie, at one point I imagined the bird man as Rivali from Breath of the Wild. And after that, I couldn't unimagine it. So can you imagine the rest of this book for me? Seeing this character as one of the main sexual leads. Help me. You know, I seem to be doing slightly better at the unscripted stuff when I have something in my hands to fiddle with, something to channel my ADHD into, so I might have to remember that. I might have to find like some sort of permanent prop to hold when I'm doing on-camera stuff in the future. Good to know. So like I said, the book seems to play around with sexual slavery, if you know what I mean, the submissive fantasy of being owned by others. But it also involves like the full-on people owned as property, and that's super wrong style slavery. I've never actually seen a book have both at the same time. Like I've had ones that are just like full-on kinky master-slave setup, and I've had ones that I've read serious books about the travesties of slavery. And it was very strange to see both concepts used in the same book, because you know, when you think about it one way, yes, these three aliens that bought this guy and liberated him are much nicer to him, and they don't do anything to him that he doesn't consent to. But he is still their property. They are still slavers. Obviously, if you're role-playing this and you're doing it consensually and it's all, you know, it's all just for fun, then not judging you at all. But, you know, when you sort of draw attention to that in the same book, that sort of weirded me out a little bit, because as nice as these aliens were, they still owned this guy. They didn't offer to let him free at any point, or, you know, set him on his own way and stuff like that. And there was some reasons for that, because the ownership of living decor is very police. That was a huge plot point in the book, that if you own a human, how you treat them and, you know, what you do with them is super heavily monitored by this entire organization that exists just to do that. So they couldn't just like set him off on his own, but the fact that they didn't even like address that made me a little bit uncomfortable. So yeah, it was interesting to see like the consensual kinky slavery mixed in with the travesty towards humanity slavery, you know? There was some issues with the pacing of the sex scenes, I think, as, I mean, I just said I wasn't really getting much out of them, but I did notice that, like, there's the opening hilarious one that's taking place, like, in the captain's chair, and then there's nothing really for a good quarter of the book, and then there's, like, two almost back-to-back, one in the present and one in the past, and then they happen fairly regularly throughout. You know, it wasn't like egregious, it was just something I noticed. There was a really cool alien that turns up right at the end that was described as like looking like a giant disembodied nervous system. And I liked that they didn't have any forward-facing orientation. Like if they were walking one way and they decide they want to walk the other way, they don't turn around, they just start moving in the other direction. And I really like that. I really love like creative little ideas of how life on other like planets and stuff would evolve differently to us, and how there might be some sort of deep fundamental difference in the way that they exist and perceive the universe. So it was nice to see something as creative as that in what is basically gay sex smut. Sorry, gay sex smut. I meant gay space smut. Smut and sex are, I feel like I'm being quite negative here, so like I do want to say like this is not a bad book. I didn't hate this at all. You know, like I said, a lot of it just wasn't really my thing, but there were some really fun moments in it. The characters were quite likable. Like I said, there's a bit of a slow burn story. I think like future novels will hopefully pick up a bit and have a bit more going on. Again, but like, this is me just describing it from a non-Erotica's perspective, because I don't know how to like really judge it from an Erotica side of things. I feel like I'm the wrong person to be talking about this book, but you know, I'm the guy who was paid to do it. So I think if you are into what I've described, if you like the idea of like funky aliens and you know, you like the submissive kink, I think you would probably enjoy this a lot, because it's that, but it also mixes in some actual story and some soft science fiction, stuff like that, and you know, characterizations and character building and some mystery and stuff like that. So yeah, I think a lot of people could really, really enjoy this book. If I was to give advice for future installments, I would say, take into account, if you are going to split the storyline between two timelines, try to alternate the action between the two of them. Like maybe have one storyline that ramps up a lot more in the beginning or in the middle and then calms down for a bit, where you have the action going on in the other timeline, because when it's when you're doing long stretches of not a lot in both of them, it can drag a little bit. So, keep pacing in mind, and keep, what splitting your story into 2 stories does to the pacing of the book overall. I would also say, don't fib on the back of the cover. Like I said, it might be setting up for a big rebellion in the sequel books, but like I said, I only have this one to work with at the moment, and there is nary a rebellion to be seen in this. God, I'm probably just saying the same things over and over again, but yeah, Fourth State of Matter. If it sounds like some of those things might be your jam, your kink, then by all means, I will put the links in the video description. And yeah, let me know if you got anything out of this ramble video here, because these if these are easy to do, I could do them more often, and cover some books, maybe some more obscure ones that, like I said, couldn't make it onto the main channel, or I can do more self-published books. If you have a book that you would like me to review, perhaps we can discuss opening up a whole a tier on Patreon just for doing this sort of thing. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how you feel about this video. So be honest with me. Don't be mean, but be honest with me if you enjoy hearing me say a lot and repeating myself, and apparently avoiding eye contact with the camera. Have you noticed that? I don't like looking directly at you guys if I don't have a script to look at. So I'm learning a lot about myself today. But yeah, thanks for joining me, and I will see you soon.